Okay, so greetings and salutations. It's January 1st, it's the new year. It is officially 2022. If you're new to my channel this year, welcome to all that is bounded and bookmarked. If you're not new, thank you for coming back once again. I'm glad that you're here. Happy New Year to you. And yeah, so before we get started into everything, being that it's the new year, first video on my channel of the new year, you can follow me on Instagram at bounded and bookmarked. You can find me on Twitter at _bound in bookmarked, which is like spelled really weird, so I'll have it linked below in the description box. All that's out of the way now. Let's get into the top 10 books from last year. Let's just get into the books. So I actually need to go get them. I have them written out on my phone, so I need to go grab them really fast. So let me do that. I got them. Before I get into my list of the top 10 books for me of 2021, mind you, I had several books, more than 10. However, there are a few of them that I've talked about so much on my channel. I've already spoken about them plenty of times that I don't want to do it again. With that disclaimer, let's do it. Amari and the Night Brothers clocks in first. This list is in no particular order. It's just that I love this story so much. Had to come first because it came first in the year. Actually, it was the first 5-star book that I read in January of 2021, and it blew me away from literally January to December. I couldn't quit talking about it, so obviously it needs to be first. Period. So this book follows Amari, and her brother Quentin has gone missing. She was very close to her brother. She finds out that he actually was a part of this really secretive group of people with magic abilities. She ends up getting an invitation one night for the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, and she goes there. She meets all these different people, some who she befriends, others who become enemies. She finds that there's this whole magical world that she was just not at all familiar with, and she's competing against kids who have known they were magical or they had these special abilities their whole life, and they've been training for this one thing. She hopes to get accepted so that she can find her brother, figure out what happened to him, because he also went to this school. So she gets in, and so many secrets are exposed about her, about who she is, about her power, about her brother, about people who she thought were close to her that really are not. And it was just so exquisite. The thing about this book that I always tell people is that, you know, reading this as a 25-year-old, I felt that giddy feeling I used to get when I was younger and I'd pick up a great book and that it stuck with me, that I loved. This story really centers adventure and excitement and thinking that anything is possible. This is a book that I think really changed my view on reading and what I expect now from certain stories. It just surpasses so many levels that I wasn't sure was possible. Nothing about this book is mediocre. Not the characters, not the plot, not the magic system, not the world building. It's all so fun and it's all so engaging. Down to the most mundane and inanimate objects, everything has a personality and it just bursts off the page. So for me, this book was a standout. It was my favorite book of 2021. I want to read books like these. So, okay. Anyway, enough gushing about that book. So next, we're gonna keep on the whole like fantasy thing. Next is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I read this book at a time where I was coming off of a fantasy high. So Vicious follows these two friends, Victor and Eli. They began their friendship as college roommates, I think, and both of them had to figure out what they wanted to do for their thesis. Both of them really had a high interest in supernatural abilities, or not really supernatural abilities, but in people who were considered extraordinary beings. They kind of wanted to look at and experiment with what happens when people have near-death experiences. That's their thesis, and they're both very much connected to this. They're both very much engrossed in it. The thing is though, they move from this being kind of like a research project into an experimental project where they both decide to actually partake in this experiment. They decide they're going to purposely have near-death experiences to see if they can get extraordinary abilities. This book talks a lot about the bounds people will push in science. This book definitely has that gray area where you think one person is the villain, and then it's like they're really not. And even within the book, the story, you see that play out as well, because they both become things and they both decide that the other person is the villain and I'm the hero. What motivates Eli and Victor are very different. So because their motivations are different, they both perceive each other as being the villain in their story. But I really loved it. It was a page turner. I couldn't help myself. I haven't read Vengeful yet, but I heard not great things about book 2. We'll come back later on in the year when I read it and tell y'all what I think about that one. But the first book is great. So this next book I just recently finished about a month ago, but it took me about 2 months to read, and that is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. Those of you who may not be familiar with this book, which I think a lot of us are by now at this point, it got a lot of traction on Book Talk and moved its way into BookTube, and now it's everywhere. This book follows 6 people who get tapped to go for 1 year to this place called the Alexandrian, well, they're not really in it, but they get they get invited to basically train for an entire year to potentially become a part of the Alexandrian Society, which is a secret society. Each person that's tapped to come here for that full year has a different ability. You have the physicist, you have the naturalist who can like basically play with life, like plant life, and then you have an illusionist, you have someone who can see through illusions, and then you have a mind reader. So really cool abilities. But the thing about this book, even though it centers around 6 people who have magical abilities and it's a fantasy, we really kind of touch more on knowledge. Each person has secrets, each person has things they're trying to hide from the other, because if you let someone see your weakness, well, potentially that could be used against you and you may not make it. Only 5 can actually be initiated. So one person will not make it. It's a really gripping read, but my favorite thing I talked about before in previous videos was that this talks a lot about knowledge and who is allowed to know certain things. There are things in this world that I'm not allowed to know because somebody somewhere has the power to keep it from me. So, I mean, it's really an amazing book. I can't wait for book 2. Very excited. Next up is Fence. I have it physically, but it's just in my closet and I can't get to that bookshelf in there. So Fence is a graphic novel. I have read volumes 1, 2, 3, I think, and that's it. Ate them up. I love them. So this graphic novel follows Nicholas. He's a fencer. He's an amateur fencer and he has dreams of becoming a professional fencer. But unfortunately where he comes from, he just comes from a very underprivileged place. He doesn't have a lot of money. His family just have not been able to give him the opportunities that he would like to have. So he ends up going off on his own to this school to try out for this team, and it's like a boarding school for boys, and he makes a team. However, when he gets there, he ends up becoming roommates with this boy named Seiji, who he actually competed against before previously and lost pretty bad, and the two of them form a friendship and a bond that eventually moves into other territories. So many great characters in the story, but they're so fun and I love them. I can't complain about anything in Fence. That's why I give it 5 stars. My next pick for this list is Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. This book was very surprising to me. It was giving very feuding families, forbidden love, you know, Twitter war, social media, all things that I really enjoy in a book, and I loved it was so cute. I love this book. It was so cute. So outside of the freaking names, Pepper and Jack, which is so cute, like Pepper Jack the cheese. So the backstory about Pepper Jack. Pepper and her family have this huge franchise of burger joints called Big League Burgers. They are everywhere. Pepper's mother is very difficult as a person. She expects Pepper to go to school, make the best grades, and also basically be the social media person for their company. Their social media persona, it falls on the back of this young teenage girl who is trying to just be a teenage girl. That's a lot of pressure, I feel like. Pepper ends up getting into this Twitter war with this guy named Jack. Jack and his family have a very small family business. It's a deli, very like mom and pop shop type situation. But he finds out that his grandmother's grilled cheese recipe was stolen by Big League Burgers, and so he's like, nah, this is not gonna fly with me. Let me get on this Twitter account, tweet to Big League Burgers like, you stole my grandmother's recipe, so what's up with the what's up? So pretty much you have this feud going on all because of this recipe that was stolen by Big League Burgers. There's also this other social media aspect in this book where this app is like an anonymous app just for students at their high school to talk back and forth. These two people end up connecting on this app anonymously and talking and having a really deep bond and forming a great friendship. Turns out it's Pepper and Jack. They don't know that they're talking on this app while they're also forming this friendship offline. So some lines become very blurred in terms of their relationship, but of course it works out. It's definitely happily ever after, so don't worry. But it was just really fun and it was very cute. I really enjoyed it. The pacing was perfect. Characters were funny. They were a good time. They had a lot of personality and they were easy to digest, and it was just a great story. So the next book is Sunkissed by Kasie West? Kasie? I can never remember if it's Kasie or Kasie West, but Sunkissed. This was like the perfect summertime read. For those of you who are maybe looking to add books for your summer reading list for 2022, add this one because it's really cute. It follows Avery and Brooks. Avery is this girl who had the perfect boyfriend, perfect life. It was all going great. And so her best friend betrays her with her perfect boyfriend. She ends up not having a good end to her school year, and her parents decide that as a family, they're going to go to this camp that they used to go to all the time as kids, basically disconnect from social media, from phones, basically just disconnect from everything back at home, just kind of reconnect with each other, with yourself. She meets Brooks, who's a camp counselor at the camp. And there's this thing where camp counselors cannot really interact on a romantic level with the campers. They have to stay very much professional. Brooks is a guitarist. He plays for the camp band, and he meets Avery, who is actually a singer-songwriter. The two of them end up connecting through music. It was just such a nice read. Both of them had a lot of depth. I think that sometimes YA books tend to lack depth with their characters because people assume that 15, 16, 17-year-olds are like super simple, surface level people, which is not true. People are people. We're all very complex at every stage. It just looks different for some people. But so I like that this book kind of touched on Avery's concerns, touched on Brooks' struggles, and showed how their friendship and the friends that they made at the camp together can make things a little bit easier. It was just a really well-rounded, put together book, and it's a great summertime read. Maybe I'll read it again this summer. Okay, the rest of the books that I have, I don't actually have physically, except for one. The other ones I don't have at all physically, but the next one is romance as well. It is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. You guys know I read it this year, well, this past year, and ate that book up. I loved it. I'm not a big fan of Friends to Lovers just because there is so much history back there, and it's like, you know, I don't like, nah. It's not my cup of tea. It was definitely Friends to, not Friends to Lovers. Supremacy. It was great. So in this book we follow Alex and Poppy. Poppy is this like travel blogger, and then Alex, he is a teacher. So they became best friends in college, and this is definitely one of those books that I love because of the age like that we're at and like the time and period that we get to see their lives, but we get to walk through kind of every part of their life. Alex and Poppy have a very on again off again relationship because of this one night that changed everything. So one day Poppy is tasked with this job. She has to travel to X, Y, and Z places and blog it. And she ends up actually asking Alex, he accepts, and they go together even though they haven't spoken in years. So on this trip they really talk a lot about like their past, what happened, what went wrong. Each chapter is like a different time of their life. I thought it was like the perfect mixture of present and past tense. I never felt like I was in any moment for too long or not long enough. I don't think they had a lot of physical chemistry. Like, I don't feel like the sexual chemistry was like there, but I do feel like the emotional connection was definitely super strong. And that for me is what really made me give this book 5 stars. I guess that's like the one pro of Friends to Lovers. You kind of do have that history, so you kind of know the person, and the connection is just, it's really deep already because of the friendship that you had before. But they were so cute, and I love that they fought. I love that they were not a perfect couple, but they worked so well eventually, and I love that they overcame every obstacle, even if it took them years. It was so good. It was so good. So my next pick is Take Me by Jen TREN. I read this book early last year, early in the year. I can't even remember what month I read this in, but it was my first polyamorous book. It was very interesting. So this book follows the beloved, my favorite, Tom and Kasie. So Tom and Kasie work together. Tom has been single for 13 long years. Kasie is married, and she tells him, I'm gonna find you the perfect woman, okay? The problem is that Tom wants Kasie, but he knows that she's married, so he's like, no, not gonna work. I'll have to just like pine after her from afar and in private. Until one day, Kasie and her husband decide to try polyamory. It's really him who kind of initiates that conversation, and she's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to open up our marriage to anybody else. So then she ends up actually deciding that like, okay, well, if there was somebody that I wanted to do that with, it would be Tom. So she kind of explores that with Tom. We get a lot of background on Kasie and her own thoughts. What does she really want in a relationship? Like, what is she looking for, and why does she not see it where she currently is at? And Tom has always been in her life. He's always been there, and she thinks that they have a better connection. She thinks that they're a better match, a better fit, and she wants to explore that without hurting anyone. So a lot of self-reflecting, a lot of finding oneself in this book, and Tom is just freaking perfect. Tom is a perfect guy, okay? Tom is cute, quirky, nerdy, funny, sexy. Like, he has like all these different layers to him that are constantly being peeled back as for the reader. Like, I'm constantly like shocked by Tom because I'm like, what? No way would Tom do that. Yet he shocks me every time. I love a character who at first you just assume they're going to be kind of like shy and reserved. No, not Tom. In some moments he is, but when he's with Kasie, with someone he's comfortable with, you really get to see different parts of him that I just fell so in love with. I think this one is definitely worth a read, and it was fun. Last on my romance list is Office Hours by Katrina Jackson. I don't know what took me so long to read this book. I really don't know. Something in me was just like, hold off, don't read it yet. And I'm mad that I waited so long, but I'm glad that I finally read it. So this book follows Alejandro and Deja. I freaking love them, first of all. Deja is a professor. She's currently trying to get tenure. Getting tenure is very stressful. It's very hard. It takes time. It takes publication. You have to work so many hours just to be able to say like, this is my job, and like to feel comfortable and safe and secure in your position. Alejandro is already tenured, so he already has that experience under his belt. He knows what she's going through right now. They're colleagues, they work together. Alejandro has secretly been pining over Deja for so long. She's also been pining for him, and I loved how vulnerable they were with each other. Like, it was just the cutest thing ever. Alejandro is like this hunky, sexy man, right? He was so soft for Deja. Like, anything she needed, he was there. He wanted to basically just take care of her. He knew that she was going through a lot. He knows what it's like to try to get tenure. He knows the stress that comes with that and the pressure. And he simply just wanted to love on Deja in all the ways, physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever she needed, he wanted to be able to provide it for her. Deja really put her job first and her tenure and her career first, and she really just pushed a lot of the other things that she wanted to do into the background, so she didn't take time for herself on weekends. And I love that Alejandro introduced to her that it's okay to play, you know, it's okay to just have a little bit of fun. I thought the two of them were so fun to read. The attraction was very strong. I think that Katrina Jackson really hit on some really just eye-opening moments. I was like, wow, yes, for sure. Teaching is hard. Hey, the hours you put in, you don't get thanked for, you don't get paid for. Like, it's just a lot that was in the story that was just, it gave it a lot more depth. And I love where we went with the book. It was fantastic. I loved it. Okay, and then last on my list is a nonfiction book that I read this year, I think in like August. It is called The Memo, What Every Woman of Color Needs to Know to Secure a Seat at the Table by Minda Harts. This book was incredible. So many fantastic gems were dropped in this book that I just can't help but recommend it to people. This book just hit on a lot of topics that I feel like we talk about briefly sometimes throughout our life. When it comes to your professional life and what you want out of your career moving forward and how you get to the next level in your career, a lot of us don't know how to navigate that space, especially if the space is predominantly white. So Minda Harts really hits on, like, for example, how to connect with your coworkers, how while still maintaining your authenticity, because I'm here to tell you sometimes we water ourselves down to be palpable to other people who don't look like us. And I don't think that's okay. I think that you should definitely walk into a space and be comfortable with being yourself. You're good at what you do, nothing else should matter. She talks a lot about that, and also how to network and how to make a lasting impression on people, to the point where if you're not in the room, your name is still being brought up in a positive way because they think, oh shoot, you know what, I know this person who will be perfect for what you're looking for right now, and even though she's not even here, I'm gonna drop her name to you because you need to get in contact with her. I listened to this audiobook, so on audio, it was great. It felt like I was talking to a friend / coworker. Definitely a lot of really useful and resourceful material in that book that you should definitely get engaged with, so yes. Yeah, I definitely hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you maybe have found some books that you want to get in on that I've talked about in this video. If you have a top 10 list, leave it below, or top 2, top 5, whatever you want to do. Share your favorite book of the year, 2021. Share that one in the comments below. So again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you on my next video.